Hello there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the stream today. And I'm going to give the game a try while starting in with the questions. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, sounds good. Do you want to share your screen or should I watch the stream?
Oh, I can. I think it's easiest if you have the stream running in the background, even just at like a low resolution. Just make sure to keep it muted.
Sounds good.
Um, and also, is it abhimonk?
It's pronounced abhimonk, but you can just call me Abhi.
Okay, Abhi. Do that.
Sounds good. Also, my internet's a little bit spotty, so if it cuts in and out, just let me know.
You're coming in loud and clear right now, but you can always reduce the stream down to even just like 160p, just so you have like some sense of what I'm experiencing presently.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay. So if we're all set to go, then we can start in with the first question, which is, well, what was your inspiration behind this game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've always liked like kind of difficult melee combat games,
Hmm.
kind of like Dark Souls and like that brand of game. So I really wanted to make a difficult melee combat game. As far as boss rushes go, I like bosses in games a lot. I didn't have a specific inspiration for a boss rush in particular, but I just knew that I wanted to make bosses instead of regular enemies because I think regular enemies are kind of expensive to make. Like you have to make animations for all of them, and they'll die in like 2 hits or something. So investing all that time in like really meaty bosses feels really good. Um, yeah, sorry, this game's kind of intense, so talking while playing is probably kind of hard.
Oh yeah, don't worry. I will do my best to showcase what's going on, but I make no promises for competency.
Yeah, no problem. That's okay. But yeah, mostly just like difficult games like the Souls games and whatnot were the main inspirations for TryHard. Outside of that, for pixel art, I play the game Hyperlight Drifter a lot,
Mm.
and I love pixel art in that game. So I pretty much look to that game for all inspiration when it comes to like attack animations and like how to make stuff kind of pop. So that's a big visual inspiration for me.
Yeah, so you mentioned Dark Souls and what was the other game?
Hyperlight Drifter.
Okay, I thought that there was one earlier on that you mentioned.
I didn't have any boss rush ones. Yeah, I couldn't think of. I'm not sure. Yeah, I
Okay,
think it was just Dark Souls and Hyperlight, I guess.
okay. Yeah, because the my best experience with probably my favorite at least 2D combat is actually Zelda 2.
Ooh, I actually haven't played any of the. I've played Breath of the Wild, but I haven't played any of the 2D Zeldas. Um, they're on my list though, definitely, because I know that I'm pretty sure Zelda inspired a lot of elements of like Dark Souls and these kinds of games.
Yeah, I think that the reason I mentioned Zelda 2 specifically is because it's definitely regarded as like the black sheep of the franchise, but the 2D combat is pretty nifty. Like it's certainly a little rough around the edges, but it's incredible for its time. Like um, the amount of sort of complexity and combinations of moves. Um, oh, getting a bit of a story here.
Yeah, these cutscenes are pretty bare bones, but they're really fun to make.
Oh boy, we got phase two going. All right, so that was just the tutorial fight.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So if I thought I was gonna have any chance of completing this while being able to talk, that's sorely mistaken.
That's totally fine. I think you'll be able to beat it. A lot of like I said, the bosses don't heal all their health at the time, so you can usually beat them in a couple attempts and whittle them down over time.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be the name of the game here. Oh boy. All right.
I think give Zelda 2 a try though. I have to give Zelda games a try in general. I feel like I've missed on a big like inspiration of a lot of developers there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you've played Breath of the Wild, you've probably played the sort of like modern classic of Zelda games. But I think that they're like Ocarina of Time, I've played through that one as well, but because I didn't play it back in its day, my family couldn't get an N64. So when I went back to try to play it, it's like these have all been better executed by like Zelda games since then.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll get a pretty good consensus on like which games um, still stand up to the test of time. But Zelda 2, I just played on the Wii via the Virtual Console.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if you subscribe to Nintendo Switch Online, you get it for free. So you can use the rewind feature to get past some of the games. Like, oh, there's some rough design decisions in that game, but the combat really shines.
It's really cool. Yeah, I know what you mean when you say like sometimes these older games, even if they're genuinely really good,
Hmm.
you can kind of feel how they're like they've just aged and they haven't aged perfectly well, or they just have some clunkiness that was kind of a necessary evil of games back then.
Yeah.
But was Zelda 2 the last 2D one, or?
Well, I mean, there are like it's the only Zelda game that is from the sort of like side-scrolling perspective, but there was still like Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, and there are of course the sort of 2D Zelda games like Minish Cap, Oracle of Ages slash Seasons that have come out on the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color respectively. So there are still other like quote unquote 2D Zelda games, but um, you know, it is for that like particular reason. Zelda 2 is the only game that is from that side-scrolling perspective. So that's what reminded me. That's why I was wondering if this game was at all inspired by it, because Zelda 2 is just in my opinion, a really great example of 2D combat.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I think it'd probably be a good experience.
Yeah. I will whittle my way through these boss fights. Um, all right. So we'll move on to our next question then, which was what was your development process for this game? Did you work through the like bosses sort of like one after another? Um, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Weirdly enough, I made the bosses in a different order than they appear in the game, I guess.
Uh,
So I had the idea for the final boss actually first. That was what inspired the whole game, I guess. I had this idea for like minor spoilers, but like a sword wielding character that would like dash around you and slash and stuff. And I really wanted a game that would facilitate that.
mhm.
So I started with well the core systems, of course. I started with like the jumping and the rolling and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, one cool thing that I did this time, which I haven't done before, but I think worked really well, was I did all the art up front.
Hmm.
I feel like that's a really good way to scope your game because oftentimes when if you make your game with some programmer art or whatever at the start, you can sometimes overscope and then end up having to cut corners in art later on, which end up reducing the polish of your game. So I did as much of the art as I could pretty much on day one, just to make sure that I like had all my art ready, and it also makes
Hmm.
so that the game itself was a lot easier to tune. Like if I wanted the character to like if I wanted to tune the roll perfectly to like speed up at the start and then slow it down when he hits the ground, I can do that because I have that animation already done.
Hmm.
Um, so I did the art up front, and then I did like the main systems and stuff, and then I did enough of the first boss to create like the core systems, and then I started
Hmm.
working on the final boss because I really wanted that boss to just pop and to have like most of my effort in there. And then from there, it was just the usual like polish stuff. So I did cutscenes at the very end. I prioritized stuff like particle effects and screen shake really early on, just to make sure that the game had like a minimum amount of like juice to it before it
Hmm.
went out. And then everything else was just whatever I had time for. So the cutscenes are really short because I didn't have a ton of time. But like the general like particle effects and stuff might pop a bit more because I did those early on, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, the particle systems, like really, all the animations are really popping. Like the screen shake that are like punctuating the text and the attacks, it all seems really cool. Um, yeah, let me in fact take a moment to just reshare the link. Lucretius, if you want to give it a try, because yeah, the cinematics, like you mentioned, having to just make it very minimalist, to fit like the like 16 characters on screen at a time. That's what it was.
Yeah, basically 16 characters across. So
Hmm. Hmm.
um, I could fit more on multi-line, which I do later on in the game, but it
Right.
helps to have short movie dialogue anyway, just because I was afraid people would like quit the game after
Yeah, just a little bit of a break gives you a little bit of a personality on each of the bosses you're about to fight. I love that we are looking at this crowd. Sort of, I totally get that vibe from background art, as minimal as it is.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was going for. I wasn't sure if it would really come through because I wanted it to be like visible but not distracting. So I'm glad it came through.
Yep. Ooh.
The bosses definitely get progressively more difficult. Um, I know that I was one thing I was really afraid of was that people wouldn't finish the game. So the whole
Mhm.
like knockdown
Oh.
all their health was a
Mhm.
really important part to the jam, I think, because I really wanted people to finish the game. Like it feels really bad to spend a lot of time on the last part of your game and have people not reach it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to like make it so people could complete it by whittling the bosses down a little bit.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a good call. Like, always better to focus on uh, quality over quantity. So, like, just focusing on three bosses instead of, as you said, like various enemies. Like, just solid boss rush. That's what we got, and then making sure that people can, in fact, get through all the bosses that you put all this effort into. Um, yeah, I think that's a really good call. Um,
Also, you're doing very well, by the way, for someone who's done nothing and should be well playing this game.
I guess I'm getting some kind of practice at it. I've done this a good number of times at this point. I'm definitely I don't know. Maybe it's not super obvious, but I'm definitely forgetting the controls as I go. Like for some reason, um, I can sort of either focus on like rolling and attacking or jumping and attacking. I can't keep my fingers on all three.
Got it. Yeah.
So that's just purely a limitation of the fact that I'm splitting my attention too many ways.
That's
It.
totally fine. I think actually the controls were a small like hiccup with this game. I know I got
Mhm.
a bit of feedback on the controls being a little clunky because your hands kind of crunched up in this claw right now, probably. So one of the things I'm doing for the post gen version is adding controller support. So I think that would um, playing with a controller in an action game just feels so much better. So I'm adding controller support for the post gen version.
Excellent. Well, that you sort of inadvertently answered two of my questions, which were going to be: is there going to be a post-gen version, and then what is how is Love 2D for supporting controllers?
It's good actually. I was surprised. I was afraid that Love 2D would be kind of too bare bones, but it has a pretty like good controller system. I guess it's pretty simple to support controllers. It's basically just the same as any other tool. It's just like you specify a string for each button, and that's basically it.
Mhm.
So it's pretty simple. The one thing that was hard about Love 2D was that the web support is a little bit spotty.
Mhm.
I had to use like so there's no official web support. Basically, someone on GitHub created a port of Love2D for the web,
Yeah.
and it's a good port, but it's also lacking in a couple features. So I ended up having to having to have like a switch in my code for the web version versus the local version. Nice, good job.
Thank you. Big games. Getting out, no matter what. All right. So can you talk a bit about oh boy, here's our phase two. Um, Can you talk a bit more about the reception the game got? Like, you may have mentioned some people are saying like, "Oh, the controls are a little clunky," but like, other than that, how were people finding the combat and the whole like multi-phase boss battles?
Yeah, I think people liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I thought they would. Basically, I had made a difficult combat game in the past,
Hmm.
Random Dare, and it was relatively like it was like mixed received, and I knew it'd be kind of polarizing because um, difficult games are like a little bit inaccessible, I guess.
Hmm.
I was afraid that I'd get a similar reaction to this game, but it was actually really positive. I think people were really nice about the game and whatnot. I think people liked the the juice of the game the most. I think that was like the thing that I heard the most about the game having a lot of like juice to it, which is what I worked really hard on.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it was way more positive received than I thought it'd be. Honestly, I was really happy to see how much everyone enjoyed it. Um, I I also didn't expect everyone to finish it, but a lot of people finished the game, which is really cool because it's like it's hard to split your time across different games in the jam, and like I totally get it. Like you're playing hundreds of games or whatever, it's fine if you invest 5-10 minutes per game. But a lot of folks finished the game, which is really cool. I was really happy about that. That was like my main goal to get people to finish this, get at least 50 people to finish this game, and it
Hmm.
felt like that ended up happening. did not expect top three at all. I I was really surprised by that. It felt really good, but also it's like game jams are always kind of up in the air, I guess. I think expecting a high rating is always kind of a bad move. You should just go into it with the goal of like meeting a lot of people and having fun.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that like you as much as a lot of these jams do kind of become popularity contests and people like focusing really hard on the ratings and like, oh, I'll rate yours if you rate mine. It's like, what's your actual objective here? Because there are plenty of game jams that if I don't see a theme that I like, I don't bother entering because if it doesn't inspire me to make a game that I want to make that I'm going to enjoy the process of making and like you know I think one of the like GMTK Jam, the most recent one, had the theme joined together. And the first thing I thought of was like, oh, maybe I could make a game about like vacuuming your house and you got like you are joined together with the like vacuum canister trailing behind you and it's getting caught on things and whatever. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
is that even gonna be fun? Like, am I even gonna be proud of having made that game? Um so I'm glad I didn't go with that idea because I was happy with the what I eventually came up with. But yeah, I think that it's a really healthy attitude to have. Is just like go into a jam with the idea of making the best thing that you can, maybe learning something new. A lot of people have talked about um, using, like you mentioned that on your jam page, that this is your first experience using Love 2D, right?
Right.
But I guess you've had experience coding in Lua before then, right?
Yeah, I made a bunch of Pico 8 games before this, and
Okay.
before that I was using Unity primarily,
Mhm.
and then I switched to Pico 8 for a little bit because I wanted some, um, I basically just wanted a different engine for a while, and then Love 2D kind of came into the mix because I just loved Lua so much.
Nice. So do you treat game jams as an opportunity to learn or to test your skills?
It's kind of a mix. Up until this jam, it was actually usually to test myself a little bit.
Mhm.
Like I did I've mostly done Ludum Dares, and I've done one GMTK jam, which was the 2019 one. I think the theme was only one.
Yeah.
So I did that one, and those are all kind of like me using a tool that I was familiar with, trying to like bat out of my wheelhouse as hard as I could, basically. So just like knock something that I know how to do out of the park and see how good it can be. Um, but then this game jam, it was a 2 week game jam, which is great because the 2 day game jams are so intense and they burn me out for months. I won't touch
Mm-hmm.
game dev for like 2 months after a Ludum Dare. Um, but for this, it was 2 weeks. I thought, okay, I have time to learn a new technology. I have time to do something different. So I decided to kind of branch out to Love 2D and just see if I could make something interesting from here.
Hmm.
And I love this jam, by the way. I love how much smaller it was than Ludum Dare and GMTK. So you mentioned you did GMTK. There's
Yeah.
like 4,000 entries in that, right? Like it's so
Oh
many
yeah.
entries. It's like you meet someone and then they're gone forever. You never see them ever again. But in this jam, I saw the same people in every single comment section. It was great. It felt like I was just among friends, just playing games together and like talking about games. It was really really nice. I love this jam so much. Um, and also, I
Nice.
love your point about the finding a theme and then not liking it. I've quit so many Ludum Dares looking at the theme, being like, I don't want to make a game on this theme. I'm just not gonna do this game jam. I'd rather just see what kind of cool games people come up with for this. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
definitely empathize with that.
Yeah, I do think it's just a question of like, you got to you got to follow your inspiration because otherwise, like, if you're not enjoying what you're making, how on earth are you going to make something that you think someone else will enjoy?
Right? Definitely.
Um, But I do think it, sort of cycling back to a way earlier point here, because I was definitely distracted by the boss fighting. Um, but I found it interesting that you mentioned that you made the artwork for the game first, because that's definitely something that is in contrast to like other interviews that I've done. Other people have mentioned that uh, they sort of build as much of the game as they can, and then they put in the artwork for it or even my process, which is kind of a bit of both. Like I've participated in maybe something like I don't know 24 jams, so I've got a decent sense of scope for what I'm going to be able to make in the amount of time that I have. So I can just kind of like make game, make art, make game, kind of go back and forth as necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it is. a very important point that making programmer art, as for as simple as it is to just have like boxes running around, it is still a non-zero amount of time. So if you can start with the like completed artwork, and if you've paced yourself out and you know you have the time to integrate it, then I think that really is the best use of your time if you are working under a limited time constraint.
Yeah, definitely. I did do some of the art in the middle. I did the art for the second boss in the middle because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have an idea of what the second boss would look like until a little bit later on in the game. But this final boss, I did the art pretty much on the second day, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that there'd be a lot of art for this boss, and I was afraid that I wouldn't finish it, so I wanted to do it first, and then um, if I had to cut something later on, I would just cut that later on. But yeah, this is actually the first. Usually, I make my games the same way you described, pretty much, where I'll
Mm-hmm.
like do the coding first, do some programmer art, and then on like the second day of Ludum Dare, I would do as much art as I could, and then that would be the end of the game, pretty much. But I watched a talk somewhere by someone talking about making the art first and just how it it kind of makes you feel like you're closer to finishing the game because at any point in your game is kind of in its like polished state. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
feel it's a lot less scary than when you're doing Ludum Dare and you have no art until like day two, the last like 5 hours, where you're just panicking. So for this game, I felt pretty relaxed throughout the whole development because I just thought like, okay, the art's already there. It's just a matter of like, what do I want to cut from this at the end if I run out of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's the first time I've done this. Maybe the last, because it was a little bit stressful spending so much time on art and not knowing if I'd be able to integrate it. Like this final boss had the most animations out of any game in the game, and I was like, am I gonna be able to make all these attacks? I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was a little bit stressful in that regard, but it was nice being able to like tweet out gifs early on and have them not be boxes and squares fighting. So that was nice.
Absolutely. I've definitely I've participated in games before where like I was on working on a team and I was doing the art while someone else was doing the development, and I just like composited a bunch of the art that I made into a like mock-up, and I showed it off. It's like, oh look, here's what we got. And I remember somebody on the final day of the jam mentioning like, couldn't believe you had that like already on the first day. Is like, no, it's just a mock-up. Not at
That's
all.
funny.
It wasn't an animated image or anything. It was just a static shot. But yeah, for sure. Like to be able to see this in motion, like yeah, that's awesome. Um, I guess one thing I do want to clarify is I'm not trying to say that any particular approach is the best approach that other people should be following.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that like everyone is going to work to whatever level they're comfortable with, whatever workflow they find is easiest for them. But it is just interesting to hear about how different people have found that like what works for them. And if you have tried one of these approaches and you feel like your approach isn't working the best for you, then that might be why um, you want to maybe try a different one for size.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. Um, I totally agree. If you have a different process and it works for you, definitely go for it. I would recommend trying to mix it up now and then in case, just to see if you can find something different that works for you also.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, totally. I think that a mix of these two approaches is probably the optimal approach. Um, like I think in the future I'd probably do what you do, which is like kind of interleave them a little bit, so do like art and programming alongside each other. At least for larger projects, like for a game jam project, it seems fine to go either way in between because the game is only going to be like 15 minutes long or something. But for a long term project, I can't imagine doing all the assets up front.
Well, yeah, especially because you don't know what the game is going to look like yet. Like you,
Yeah,
for a long term project, you've got a gray box. You've got to like paper prototype if you can. Um,
definitely.
you never want to invest too heavily into a specific direction until you've got some sense of certainty that it's the right path to go down. So that's where the like constant iteration and ideally getting the game out in front of people and getting their feedback on it on each stage is really going to help with that.
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. A big part of game jams that I love is just how much more feedback you get compared to normally. Because as like a hobbyist indie dev, it's kind of hard to get people to play your game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you're in a game jam, you have a bunch of game developers to just like talk about and just like figure out just more ideas for these games and stuff. It's really nice to have so much feedback just flowing in all at once. main source of feedback, I guess. These game jams. So that's like my favorite part of these game jams, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is one of the best reasons to be participating in game jams is that it does give you this kind of built-in audience for the works that you're making, and it gives you exposure to a lot of, other people doing really creative stuff and working within interesting limitations. So, yeah, I think it's just all around a good time. Oh boy. I think I sort of having to. Okay, there. So that's an attack for which I should be using roll. I was just about like halfway through saying it's like, oh my goodness. I was just about halfway through saying that like my way of playing this with like just focusing on jumping and attacking is serving decently well. Um,
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think there's only one attack in this fight that you really have to roll.
yeah, like the purple lightning bolts, right?
Yeah.
Um, so Uh, yeah, I know I kind of like interrupted myself, but at the same time, I don't think I had too much else to say about the nature of participating in jams. Just that like it's a good time. You're gonna find something about it that you like. Um, but was there anything else that you wanted to say about participating in well, low res jam in particular? You mentioned is great that because it's like a smaller jam and you get a more of a sense of community. Um,
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I really like the size of the jam and how I felt like I made a lot more friends this jam, basically.
Excellent. So you've already like on the Gen page you mentioned how like getting the text to adhere to the 64 by 64 resolution was one of the toughest things, but was there anything else challenging about the aspect ratio or the resolution rather?
Think. I think the resolution for this game wasn't too bad because since it's just two people on the screen at a time, it was pretty easy
Hmm.
to manage like the screen real estate as far as like the UI and like the characters on the screen and stuff. So the text was pretty much the biggest hurdle for the low resolution. Everything else seemed to kind of actually benefit from the low resolution. Like I'm not the best artist, but at a low resolution, it's a lot easier to kind of cover up a lot of like my lack of artistic knowledge. So um, that served me really well.
Yeah, low resolution, low frame rate. It's all comes together. But like these are really fluid animations. Like I can like there's great flourishes, like the way that the boss's cape is flowing in response to her actions. Like that's all really cool stuff. Um, So, you mentioned that you're going to add in controller support for the game. I'm just curious, what did you have in mind for the button mapping?
So I was gonna do if you're using an Xbox controller, A
Hmm.
for jump, X for attack, and B for roll, and then
Hmm.
just left stick or D-pad for motion, basically.
Okay. So, can I suggest um, keep A as jump, but maybe treat the bumpers as your attack and your roll? Because that way you don't have to move your thumb. You can just use your index fingers to hit the two alternate buttons, keep your thumb on jump, and that way you've sort of like got all the controls within one grip. Or even just
Hmm.
there's no reason not to do both. Like you could have it mapped to X and B, but then also the bumpers.
That's a good idea. I know a lot of indie games with smaller numbers of controls double up on buttons. So that's a
Hmm.
really good idea. I could do X and B for attack and roll, and also like left and right bumper or something.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's definitely like a personal preference of mine of like when I'm designing the control scheme for games. I don't like the message here. Sorry, I realized I didn't want to talk over that, but yeah, just have to keep trying. Nice. 15 times? All right. All right. Um, cool. So yeah, I was just saying that like when I'm planning out the control scheme for things, I definitely like not having to take my using the bumpers and triggers because you basically always got your fingers on those buttons, and that's even why the like paddles are really neat on some of the like pro controllers. Not that I have one, but I like the fact that you can use like your what is that, your ring finger, I guess, to hit the buttons on the underside of the controller. And that way you just keep your thumb on one button, or possibly keep your thumb on the right stick, for some games that use dual stick controls. Um, Otherwise, you get people doing kind of like crazy claw grips, which I tried at one point to do the like the claw grip thing so that I would keep my thumb on the joystick and then use my index finger to hit the face buttons. It just that
Oh,
speaks more
I've done
to
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that in Doom Eternal. That's what I did the claw grip for, because you have to jump while shooting and all that stuff in the middle of the game.
Yikes.
Um, it's definitely a huge pain.
Yeah. So I just realized that there's our title, the player character, and the final boss squaring off against each other. Um, but yeah, SK Vader, this is Try Hard. It is a boss rush, and we're just interviewing the developer. Hello.
Hello.
But yeah, so if anyone in chat does have any questions, please feel free to get those in now. But so other than the controller support, what else did you have in mind for post jam version of this?
Yeah, good question. I'm trying to scope it so that I don't overscope it, but I really want to add a harder difficulty because,
Hmm.
so I know the game is reasonably hard as is, but I had a lot more planned for these bosses that I didn't end up getting to do. So I really wanted to add like a hard mode where the bosses kind of get all their power unlocked and like instead of a tutorial, they'd be like just more intense fights for these bosses. I have a bunch of new attacks kind of planned and like different attack patterns and stuff, and a slightly more expanded story for the final boss because I really liked. I just liked making the final boss a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so for the post game, mostly just the controller support and then the hard mode. I'm planning on also adding skippable cutscenes because I want to release this game on some subreddits, and
Hmm.
the subreddits I usually post to are a little bit like um, more like I guess people, I guess game devs are typically like just nicer about this stuff than players are.
Hmm.
Um, I've had a lot of really wonderful, brutally honest feedback from people who aren't game devs on Reddit. So
Hmm.
I want to make sure that all the UX is kind of rounded out. So like you can skip cutscenes, you'll be able to skip the tutorial and stuff like that. Because I've had games where I've uploaded where people are just like, oh, I closed it as soon as the first cutscene played. Sorry, I'm like, oh, sorry, I made skippable cutscenes.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad. Like you're right. You do have to make that stuff skippable, but it's just like,
Right, definitely.
my God, it frustrates me. It's like how the first one, like, come on, give it an opportunity. Like I can understand wanting to skip it, like if you're not a fan of the writing or whatnot, but like,
Right, right.
come on, give the writing a chance. Like especially for as minimalist as this is, and I think it's very effective. Yeah, I've definitely and like I've done that. I've had to go through and make cutscenes skippable, and I think the funny thing is having made as I said, like a good number of jam games myself. The only time that I found people weren't skipping the text is when they found that like this game is about text. Like I've made a couple of what do you want to call it, like interactive fiction games. Um, a couple games where you're just like walking and talking to characters. And because that's the point of the game, no one's trying to skip the text because that's the game. So anything else though, they want to skip it. They want to skip it if they can.
Right,
But
right.
when it's actually just a matter of like, oh, the point of this game is the conversations, is the text, then there's like, oh, okay, I'll sit down and read through this. Otherwise, it's just like skip, 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 and it's very frustrating because
Mm-hmm.
SK Vader's joined us here in chat. Like you've always mentioned how you want to inject story into every game you make, but frustratingly, a lot of people are just like they seem to either want story or gameplay, and they don't like the synthesis of it. They insist that if there's gameplay to be had, they want to skip all the story just to get to the gameplay. And it's like, come on, that's not a healthy attitude to have.
Yeah, definitely. I've been guilty of that myself. It always feels like when I play like a AAA game, the game has to kind of prove itself to me. Like the writing is like to be skipped unless it proves that it's excellent, and then I'll watch every single second of the dialogue or something.
Yeah, and I will
Like
talk to every single NPC in the town.
right, exactly. What was the last game that I did that in? I can't remember what the last game I did that in was, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's definitely a game where I did that, where once I fell in love with the dialogue, I read every single line of the dialogue that was possibly there. And it's kind of either or. Like it's either that or I just skip the cutscenes almost instantly, and it feels bad because as a developer, you try hard. I spend time writing this dialogue. People spend time writing these stories and like making stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I already mentioned that they like subtle storytelling. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I love like environmental storytelling is really hard to do, but it's also like the best way to pull a player in because
Mhm.
it's a really easy way to like it's a really like unintrusive way to rope a player into the dialogue. Like if they see it and they think this is really cool, now you've got someone who'll watch all the cutscenes, right? As opposed to forcing them to see it. I don't know if you've played have you played God of War by any chance, the newest one?
Um, I haven't played through it, but I've watched a full play of it.
Okay, nice. So like you've probably seen a lot of that game has dialogue happening while you're doing stuff. So you'll be
Yep.
like in the boat with your son and they'll be talking
Yep.
together. I love that kind of stuff because you're still like engaged enough to steer this boat, but you're not so engaged that you can't listen to this cutscene. And it got to the point where I would just like stop the boat at the dock because I wanted to hear the end of the story that he was telling his son or something. It got really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anytime a game can do that or present something through like an audio log, like if you've got a specifically like non-combat section of your game, like you've just gone through the combat section and like now you're taking a little bit of time to take a breath, go through the environment, you can use that opportunity to deliver voiced dialogue. It's like that's the only problem with delivering a game, delivering dialogue and story through text is that you kind of do have to stop to read the text.
Right,
But
right.
if you can do it voiced, then it gives you the opportunity to sort of do multiple things simultaneously.
Yeah, definitely. I actually didn't think about that. Yeah, the lack of voice makes presenting the story a lot more difficult in these games,
Yeah.
or at least presenting it in like a really unintrusive way.
All right. So um, I guess if we don't have any other questions coming in from chat, then I guess I will just ask, where can people find you on social media? And do you have any other projects of yours that you'd like to plug?
Sure. So I don't have any other projects that I like to plug, but you can find me on Twitter at abhimonk. I can
Read on it.
send you a. It's actually probably on my itch page
It
actually.
is, and I've just posted it.
Yeah. So that's where I am on Twitter. I have a SoundCloud where I write music and stuff like that for my games mostly. So that's also where you can find me. I post pretty sporadically, like in bursts, because I kind of go through periods of freedom and periods of really busyness. The last 3 weeks happen to be really free, so I can make a game, but usually it's a little bit infrequent, my updates. So, um, but yeah, those are the two main places you can find me. Oh, I better ask what engine is this made in. This is in
Yeah,
Love 2D.
we touched on that at the sort of the beginning of the interview, but yeah, just to restate really quickly, Love 2D is the engine, and then you were sort of primarily inspired by Dark Souls and Hyper Light Drifter.
Right.
Oh, I realize I closed up the game.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Well, okay, I already played it at least once through to completion. I'm curious. So, what do you use to make the art and the animations?
Say it again. Sorry, I cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. What do you use to make the art and the animations?
So I use Sprite.
Yeah.
It's a pretty common pixel art tool. I'm sure you've run into it before.
Oh, yeah. I own it.
Okay, nice. Yeah. I used to use graphic scale, but I switched to Sprite because it seemed like a little bit more feature rich for pixel art and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I say so the funny thing is, I say that like I do own the software. I paid for it, but I continue to use GameMaker's built-in image editor because it's just
Oh,
so easy to work entirely within an engine and not have to switch between programs. So,
definitely. I actually started with GameMaker. I remember now. That was the first engine that I used. And I remember loving how it was like a one-stop shop for that kind of stuff. It had an animation tool too. You can like string frames together in it, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was a really nice thing about GameMaker. I can definitely see using that instead of importing stuff in all the time.
Yeah, for simple stuff, it's really not bad. For anything more complex, like Game Maker Studio 2 supports layers, the original one didn't. And even then, I don't know what their support for layers is like because I never really moved on to Game Maker Studio 2.
Mm-hmm.
But
Got it.
yeah, layered support is really handy. Like, do you use layers a lot when you're creating the sprites?
Um, Not that much actually. I probably should, but a lot of my sprites feel kind of hacked together. Like I'll kind of just draw a blob and then color it in as I go for each
Mm.
frame. Like I'll draw the main keyframes and then I'll just figure out how can I avoid adding any frames to this, and then that's my process basically. Um, and actually, I found out that for this low resolution, that ends up working really well. Like for the cape animation and stuff like that, there's like
Hmm.
no frames in between. It's the cape goes up and then it goes down, right? And that
Yeah.
feels really poppy in a game as low frame rate as this. So it kind of works to my advantage for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, like, where did you? I know I was like sort of starting to wrap things up. Now we're starting to talk about the animation. I'm curious just about like, do you have any formal study in video game animation, or is this just like picking stuff up by working through it over time?
Yeah, definitely no formal study. This is kind of just like a long time project, I guess. I've been trying to improve my art for the last like 5 years or so. So I started off with like stick figures and MS Paint stuff, and slowly
Mhm.
moved up. Um, Mostly just from YouTube tutorials, basically. So I think I followed Heartbeast's tutorials in pixelating at the time.
Yeah.
I think I bought his course.
Hmm.
Um, it was a great course on like stuff that I didn't even know existed. Like color theory, it was completely alien to me, and that course taught me a little bit more about color theory, which helped a lot. But no formal training, mostly just YouTube and practice, and sticking to a very low resolution helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you do have like the Heartbeast tutorial that you mentioned, or any others, I'd love it if you could share those on the community Discord that we've got. Because yeah, I'd love to take a look at some of those, and I'm sure others would love to see it as well.
Sure. Which community Discord is it?
Oh,
The
I'll make sure to send you an invite to that. But other than that, I just also wanted to say that if you have any other projects in future, I'd be more than happy to have you back on the show. This was a lot of fun to have this conversation. Game really plays great. I guess I'm trying to think if I did have anything to say about it in terms of actual feedback, because I really was focused on just trying to kind of like rush through it. I was like less focused on dodging the attacks and more just kind of like, okay, I can dodge this one. This one I'm just going to sort of tank and ignore. Um, do you think that the like are the attacks specifically designed so that you can get through them without taking damage ever?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's a big like design rule, I guess, for me when designing any kind of combat game. Every attack has to be like dodgeable and predictable. So you can no damage this game. It's a little tough because some of the attacks are kind of quick. A lot of it requires you to have played the game before and kind of know how some of the attacks work.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you can definitely no damage this game. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, awesome. Like massive respect for that because again, that's I think the right way to make a combat system is to design the entire thing with no damage in mind, but then still to give the player health so that they can make the occasional mistake and like as you said, learn how an attack works in the first place.
Definitely.
So cool. And then yeah, just the overall sentiment of it not being too punishing. The boss is not recovering much of their HP per death, so yeah, I think that makes it really nice and accessible, and you've got that sort of nice message at the end of you can get through it if you just keep trying.
Thank you.
But yeah, so thank you so much for joining me on the stream here today, and hope you have a good evening. And I look forward to seeing your future projects.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you too. Thanks for
All right,
having me.
likewise. All right, have a good evening. Bye bye.